Hello, everyone, and welcome back to NPA and Smogon for some more Pokemon action. Sierra Dawn, Jake Muller here. Jake, how you doing?
Great, Sierra. How about you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. I was practicing some games beforehand. I was losing said games, so I'm excited to watch people significantly better than me win some matches over here.
Way to get the losses out of the way before some three winners of a matches. Hey,
Exactly. You know how it is, but no, excited to be back here for another NPA week. Jake, this is your first one too, right?
it is.
Oh, are you excited?
Yeah, I know. I love NPA. I've gotten to participate in it, many times, both as a player and a manager, and then 1 year on the broadcast as well prior to this. And so it's been a really wonderful thing for the VGC community, and I'm really excited to stay involved with it.
Yeah, it's always a lot of fun being able to see top trainers face off against each other, especially too at that extra little level of like, okay, did we manage to scout out the other person properly? Like,
Mm-hmm.
what teams are going to be brought? I think is always a lot of fun. So I'm excited to dive in today and to dive into our first match.
Of course, our first match is going to be a really exciting one. We've got Sanvy, who is a international and regional champion over in Europe, playing against Clipperz, who's done very very well at some American majors. And both got some pretty cool teams here. Sanvy rocking the classic Miraidon Arabega team, the team that won the World Championships, with a couple little twists on it. And then Clipperz team, something I think is actually really really cool.
Yeah, we got the Galarian Wheezing, something that's made more and more appearances here in Reg G, with a couple of just like infamous duos here. At least when I'm looking at this, I'm looking at the Mousehold and Annihilate. That one is it's dreadful to go up against sometimes, especially too, since it's a little bit of a roulette with this Annihilate, what it's going to go for first. You gotta respect this final gambit that can come out at any opportunity, but as well, you don't want to be on the wrong end of any of its other powerful moves. And of course, same thing with this Mousehold. It can follow me, so you just have to direct into it, or the Population Bomb for a lot of damage. This one with Feint as well, which I really like.
It is interesting to see Annihilate with both Whimsicott and Mousehold with no beat up. It's something that a lot of people take advantage of, the stacking Rage Fist with your own beat up. But in this case, you'd have to like Terastallize the Annihilate and then Population Bomb it and maybe just knock it out outright if you want to boost up that Rage Fist. So certainly not going to be opting for that. But this Choice Scarf Kyogre paired alongside both the Whimsicott and the Indeedee with the Psychic Surge and the Tailwind with Prankster, I think is a really cool way to make sure that you're getting off these water spouts no matter what. And looking at Sanvy's team, Urshifu resists water, but does it really with that special defense stat? And then Miraidon, of course, does, but you don't really want to let it take those super powered water spouts, so got to manage that.
Especially too when I'm looking at the Aaron Clippers team here, I'm looking at this Indeedee and the fact that you can first off stop any priority that wants to threaten your Kyogre at all, but as well being able to fire off some really powerful expanding forces into the other team. So okay, well maybe you're okay taking an Origin Pulse or a Water Spout. Are you okay taking that and an expanding force? So there's definitely a lot of things that I like here, especially too. There's some naturally speedy options over on Sanvy's team, but you're able to try and match that with your own Whimsicott, which is really, really nice. Though Sanvy does have Light Screen on his own Whimsicott, a nice way to kind of negate some of the damage coming out from the opposing end.
Endeavor Focus Sash, kind of a cool tech on Whimsicott is there as well for Clippers. If you activate that Focus Sash, go down to 1 HP, and you're able to use that Endeavor attack. You basically just set the target to 1 HP exactly, so anything else can knock it out later, like a Feint, like a Choice Scarf attack from the Kyogre. So nice little combo there, and it's going to be fun to see how it plays out.
Yeah, I'm excited to hop into the match here, see exactly how this one's going to be shaking up between two really strong trainers, considering this is something that, despite, like, obviously we got NA and EU here, but in terms of, like, top tables at an event, if they both attend the same event, this is definitely something you can see happening in terms of a matchup, which I think is extra fun.
And they're also both performing well within NPA. Clippers is 5-1, so having played most of the weeks, only one loss. And then Sanvy is 4-3, but against a field that's this strong, being still positive is a great accomplishment. Especially kind of like you hinted at earlier, Sierra. It's kind of easy to scout out what trainers have used in past weeks, and maybe try and pick apart some patterns. And seeing Sanvy using this team, this is certainly a team that people playing NPA are familiar with and prepared for, but still going positive after all that just speaks to his strength.
All right, getting into the match. Talked about the Annihilate and the danger that it can have, and it's going to be coming out right away for Clipperz next to the Whimsicott, but it's a Whimsicott apiece. Sanvy bringing his own next to powerful restricted Miraidon, so a lot of damage potential from both sides of the board, but I'm specifically looking up this Miraidon and just the potential of a very powerful hit here. And Tailwinds to start, not necessarily the most surprised by that coming out for Clipperz, because you have to be matching the speed that Sanvy, of course, is going to be setting up here. Volt Switch going to be coming out next. A lot of damage considering the terrain. That's a good chunk of damage. And now Sanvy can bring something else from the back. And our opportunity to see what it is. Burgerath and Iron Hands.
Interesting to see Sanvy go straight for that Tailwind, knowing that the Iron Hands and Burgerath were in the back. You know, I guess you kind of had to match it, right? Because if Clipperz goes for the Tailwind and the final Gambit into the Miraidon, you just lose it straight up, and you want to prevent that. But a nice read there, going straight for close combat. Would have been, pretty devastating to go for that final Gambit and lose a bunch of your HP and make it, much less useful. But that final Gambit, the close combat rather, doing a good chunk to the Iron Hands. And now you're going to spot with this Iron Hands, threatens a fake out. You have to be worried about breaking that Focus Sash, but of course, not as useful into that Ghost type Annihilate.
Crystallization already in the match, and that's Iron Hands into this Water type. When you stare down a Moonblast from the opposing end, this can take just that hit just a little bit better. Encore, though, that's going to make sure that Sanvy's Whimsicott is stuck going for yet another Tailwind, which, of course, not going to be very useful on here. Close combat is only going to be good for a little bit of chip, but the defenses and special defense are going to fall. But when we saw where the targeting was and the Whimsicott tried to target into that, that means the Annihilate gets off scot-free this turn, as Whimsicott's only going to be taking a little bit of damage, which means even less recovery.
A great turn for Clipperz there. You saw that the Whimsicott on Sanvy's end attacked after the Annihilate, so it wasn't even going for a priority move. It was going straight for that Moonblast, maybe to try and double up that Whimsicott for a KO through Focus Sash, but locking it into Tailwind, as it kind of has to leave the field unless it wants to get sniped by another attack here.
Yeah, so Whimsicott forced to be switching out. Miraidon hits the field yet again, as we're just getting this double switch. So we already knew what was the other one, so that's going to be Burgerath on out. So Burgerath, definitely one that's more than capable of holding its own, and a little bit more so now that we are getting the defense boost from that Electric Seed on the swap-in. Endeavor, so this Whimsicott's taken a lot of damage, and that's going to pass it right along into the Miraidon, and the double up. Rage Fist, Miraidon swapping in instantly gets KO'd. I love the Endeavor on the Whimsicott. You don't even need to go down to 1 HP. It already has lower HP than a lot of these big bad restricteds. And having taken so much damage, that is a devastating loss on that turn.
That's exactly why Endeavor is so cool. Like you said, Whimsicott not known to have the most HP, and on a set like this with the Focus Sash, you really don't need any. You can invest all of your training into other stats, and so that Endeavor, even from roughly half HP, took the Miraidon very low, easily enough for the Annihilate to finish it off. And now that Ndidi comes in, there's no more electric terrain for the rest of this game.
Dude, these Endeavors are stacking up. Another one into the Burgerath, Moonblast into Ndidi. At least you get a special attack drop, so it's not going to be doing quite as much damage. And earlier we saw both players contend for this Tailwind. Now Burgerath for this Trick Room, as both of these Tailwinds petering out on this turn. So Burgerath and slow Iron Hands definitely going to benefit from these slower conditions.
You have to wonder, since the Annihilate attacked before the Whimsicott earlier in this game, if the Whimsicott on Sanvy's end is just really slow and might attack before this Ndidi as well, which could be huge.
Have to see is going into this Moonblast. Okay, Ndidi's going to be the one hit. Whimsicott would be the one to go. But we're just going to get a little reversey of the Trick Room, so everything right back to normal.
Yeah, Trick Room being reversed there means that, I presume, as Kyogre comes in here, and let's say you want to go for the Tailwind with your own Whimsicott, reestablish the speed advantage. That means you're not attacking with the Whimsicott, and the Burgerath almost certainly does not outspeed this Kyogre. And now Kyogre can just kind of use Water Spout, knock out this Burgerath, and kind of force this Whimsicott on Sanvy's end to decide, whether you want to go for some support move, maybe get some chip damage, maybe try and finish off this Ndidi. But even then, the combination of Water Spout and the expanding force from Ndidi might just be enough to KO Whimsicott anyway. So now in a really strong, kind of offensive pin position for Clipperz, just based on the ability to reverse that Trick Room.
And gotta go for it with the light screens and get as much damage as possible. When you're looking at a Farigiraf that has been so damaged, that's a little bit scary, especially with this Kyogre. This isn't
Yeah.
an offensive Terra type. Instead, we are committed. All out Terra, water, light screen. This is Whimsicott trying to do what it can. I don't know how good that's gonna be when you're looking at a full HP Terra Water Kyogre Water Spout on the opposing end. Whimsicott will take the hit, but it was the Farigiraf that needed to survive through the turn to retwist those dimensions back up, and it's not gonna have the slightest of chance. Indeedee next on the turn, single target expanding force into this Indeedee. It's slowly but surely hanging on, but so much damage has been done to Sanvy's team already.
The Terra Water Iron Hands is kind of the only thing that you really wanted to bring in here, and is kind of your best chance. But even just looking at the moveset there, you can see it does not have an electric type move. There is no wild charge to try and one-hit KO this Kyogre. And even then, it's still a Terra Water Water Spout. Even with the Terra Water on the Iron Hands and the light screen, this is still going to do a huge chunk.
The light screen's putting as much work as it can, but
Yeah.
these moves barraging over and over into the opposing end. So you get the water spout first, a little bit of damage, and then, all right, Iron Hands is going to be hanging on. I think at this point, it's just for show. You will get a little bit of HP recovery from that Drain Punch, but all Clipperz has to do is just click the same two moves. So seeing the towel thrown in, not too much as a surprise. Kyogre and Aaron up one in the set.
Cool way to see how players kind of play those different Kyogre sets differently. We see a lot of the kind of Calm Mind leftovers Terra Grass Kyogre sets where you want it out early to start stacking those Calm Minds. You don't necessarily need the Rain Up for the entire game because you're boosting that damage with Calm Mind anyway. But in this case, Clipperz did a really good job of kind of setting up the board for Kyogre to come in and clean up. This Choice Scarf Kyogre set is much more of a late game Pokemon than something like the setup, Calm Mind sets. So it's just a really good, use of all those tools. The Endeavor on the Whimsicott especially, setting up the KO for the Miraidon, kind of broke the game open for Clipperz because at that point it was difficult for Sanvy to weather those water spouts.
I'm still nerding out over this Endeavor Whimsicott. I think it's just such a fun little thing. I love that you called out if you bring it down to Focus Sash and then the Faint from Household, but seeing the work that it was able to put in without, when Whimsicott sometimes can't really damage some of these Pokemon on the opposing teams when you're eyeing up only that Moonblast. So to have that kind of combo, your forced attack into this Whimsicott, because you don't want it to be able to survive to the point of setting up another Tailwind or sticking around for Encores or Light Screens, but then the more you chip it down, the more damage it does in return. Like, it's just a cool little piece of tech. And now I'm curious with where we're getting the adjustment, because it was all fine and dandy for Sandy to set up that later Trick Room in the game, but you didn't have that damage output in that board state to deal with the Indeedee on the opposing end, which was the easiest. All right, I'm just going to click Trick Room again, reverse it, and my Kyogre's going to sweep the game. So where do you go from there?
Exactly. When the Trick Room got set up, it was the Whimsicott and the Farigiraf on the field for Sanvy, and those are probably the two least offensive Pokemon on the team, and it just didn't have a great way to capitalize on it. That Iron Hands was sitting in the back, and if Iron Hands could have gotten a couple attacks off in Trick Room, that game could go a little bit differently, especially because Aaron, if the Trick Room is up, and especially if the Electric Terrain is up, and Iron Hands is attacking for even bigger damage with that Quark Drive ability activated, this could be a much more positive game plan for Sanvy.
Yeah, we'll have to see. This Kyogre team, especially with all the different tools, does not look the most fun to go up against. So let's see if he's brought the right adjustment here in game 2 to try and take this into a 3-game set. So I'm excited to see too if there is an adjustment on the opposing end. You had talked about that late game Kyogre. It's also something that in the lead, as long as you don't think there's the Miraidon there, can do a lot of damage. Going into this though, run back for Aaron of the game 1, and that's going to be both a piece. We're running back the exact same leads.
I like this lead for Clipperz a lot, just because you have the immediate threat of a Tailwind Final Gambit. I'm not sure that anything on Sanvy's side can comfortably take that Final Gambit. Iron Hands and Farigiraf both do have a lot of HP, but even if you're switching that in, they're not getting knocked out. They're down very, very low, and that kind of cripples them for the rest of the game, especially when those two are kind of your defensive backbone.
Where we saw this go the first turn in the very first match, it was a Tailwind apiece and then a Volt switch into the Annihilate, and Sanvy switching out. So to see if it's going to repeat. Instead, Electro Diff going for all of the damage into this Annihilate. It's going to hold on. So it has just a little bit of HP left, and that's going to be Rage Fist. So good thing, again, we're not getting that final Gambit. Rage Fist, though, not nearly that same damage output, and now this Miraidon could just go for yet another attack, especially being the speediest thing out here.
That's where the threat of the final Gambit is sometimes even better, because not letting it happen is kind of the biggest thing Sanvy had to worry about. But by not letting it happen, you give up some momentum there. So Volt Switch, I think, is maybe what you want to be using most of the time in this case, especially into this Assault Vest and Annihilape, which presumably will be able to survive one Electro Drift. And now that you've given it a Rage Fist stack, you've even put it in a place where maybe Moonblast or Whimsicott can knock it out, you're starting to have to trade some of your resources earlier than you would have liked.
A little switch, Whimsicott out, and that's going to be Iron Hands in, holding on. Miraidon 6 HP, so going to be allowed to go for another Electro Drift into this Annihilape. Not going to have the opportunity to try and take care of this restricted Pokemon, so a little risky. It was definitely close, but Miraidon, holding on by the slimmest of margins, will be able to claim the first KO in the match.
Pretty crucial survival there. I think if Miraidon goes down, you're in a really, really rough spot if you're Sanvy. We're seeing some interesting speed stuff going on too. The Miraidon on Sanvy side being slower than the Whimsicott on Clipperz. Miraidon naturally a lot faster than Whimsicott, so gives away a little bit about how some of these Pokemon have been trained. Indeedee coming in here though, really nice for Clipperz, because now this Iron Hands can't go for a fake out. You really don't have anything that can swap in super comfortably to this, Twisted Spoon expanding force and terrain. And you're threatening a lot more damage, especially if you can get something like the Endeavor off with the Whimsicott. It is still at full HP, but remember, it doesn't have too much HP naturally, especially when you're not training it. So, an Endeavor into this Iron Hands might even bring it down, to near half HP just off the bat.
Yeah, if you're expecting a Terastallization coming out, which seems pretty fair considering the two Pokemon on Clipper's side of the field, an Endeavor would definitely put in a lot of work. But it's a swap from the Miraidon, not wanting to lose that piece on this turn, as Whimsicott for Sanvy's coming onto the field. It's yet again, Terra Water Iron Hands is going to be the Pokemon and the Terastallization of choice. So this is going to be taking the hits from the opposing end just a little bit better, but how much? Not even targeting into that slot for the Moonblast, instead into Whimsicott, expanding force into both of these Pokemon. Whimsicott holds on a decent amount of damage, and a lot in return. His Drain Punch is going to be bringing down this Indeedee to 1/3 of its health, and that's a lot recovered.
That is a really nice turn for Sanvy. Of course, the Terra Water Iron Hands kind of the perfect storm for this matchup specifically. You're able to resist the Water Spouts and then make the Expanding Forces neutral. The Moonblast into the Miraidon slot makes a lot of sense, because you know that your Whimsicott's faster there, and maybe you suspect that the Miraidon's speed is in between the Indeedee and the Whimsicott. You want to make sure that Miraidon goes down, doesn't get the chance to Electro Drift the Indeedee, and go for that Moonblast to knock it out. But Sanvy making a nice play here, bringing in that Whimsicott that can now try and set up something like that Light Screen, further reduce the damage from the two Pokemon on the field, and of course that Kyogre in the back, and allows Sanvy a chance to kind of take these attacks a little bit better and then start favorably trading with these Drain Punches.
Having a lot more resources at this point in the battle, too, to be able to try and deal with it is nice. Endeavor, we finally get to see how much exactly that's going to do into the Iron Hand. Still a respectable amount. Whimsicott goes down after setting up that Light Screen, but we're still at a point where this Iron Hand has a good amount, and the fact it did so much to the Indeedee means it won't get too much recovery from this turn, but that's still a little bit of honest recovery, and you do get a KO, so at least you get to trade 1-for-1 piece here.
And importantly, you're bringing Clipperz down to 2 Pokemon remaining, and eliminating the Indeedee with the Psychic Terrain. So now if you bring the Miraidon back in, Electric Terrain remains up for the rest of the game. That will then activate Cork Drive Special Attack Boost, and the Cork Drive Attack Boost on Iron Hands, and then the Hadron Engine Special Attack Boost on Miraidon once it returns to the field. And of course you can reactivate that Electric Seed on the Farigiraf, which actually won't matter too much anymore, because there are only special attackers remaining. But now, I mean, you still have to worry about Water Spout, right? Except you have the Light Screen, you've got the Terra Water Iron Hands. You're in a much better position this time around.
Definitely a lot better position. Still a little scary with the amount of damage that this Miraidon has taken, and the fact that you're still at full HP with this Kyogre. So there's definitely some things stacked up against Envy here. As you called out, Electric Seed, that's not going to matter at this point. It's just making us delay a little bit longer until we get to the good stuff. The rest of the match here with another Terastallization. Yet again, Terra Water on this Kyogre, making sure that you get the most amount of damage from these Water Spouts in the rain. Now, we got to see this is the choice scarf. It is fast, and we're right on swapping in. You 6 HP. It is absolutely cooked. And
Oh,
into the Farigiraf, I mean, it survives, but it's still not looking so great, and that's still through light screen.
if this Moonblast here KOs, this is going to be a pretty wrapped up game in Clipper's favor, but the light screen might make a difference here. And 5 HP, it hangs on to set up that Trick Room just barely.
And that is everything. That's your only remaining tool in this match. Get that 5 HP. Now Iron Hands can come back out onto the field. And you had called out to the terrain. So now you get this Quark Drive boost. You get this attack boost. And when you're looking at needing every bit of HP possible and a potential Drain Punch into the Kyogre on the other end, that can deal a significant amount of damage. And especially, too, with the Farigiraf with this Helping Hand.
Yeah, Drain Punch will do kind of 2 things here. It'll heal the Iron Hands while also lowering the damage of Water Spout, both of which are very important in ways that this game can be much more in Sanvy's favor. But the Drain Punch with the Helping Hand and the Quark Drive, almost a 1-hit KO there.
This is going to be the saddest little Water Spout at about 3, 2, 1 Farigiraf. That's going to be the KO first, so the Whimsicott putting in as much work as possible. But again, this is a choice Scarf Kyogre. It has no opportunity to do anything else, and it does all of 2 HP. So yeah, this is a 1v2 situation. Light Screen is still up, and when the Kyogre is not doing any amount of damage, like literally no damage, it feels so safe from Sanvy to just target into the Whimsicott instead. And with that Terrestrialization into the Water type, sure, like the Moonblast will do some damage, but it's not going to do nearly as much as if you didn't have the Terrestrialization on your side.
I think importantly, like we saw Sanvy selected the Drain Punch there, you cannot Heavy Slam the Whimsicott this turn. Because if you do Heavy Slam it, since Trick Room is up, Whimsicott attacks first. Whimsicott could Endeavor the Iron Hands down to 1 HP, and then Water Spout could knock it out. So smartly identifying, like, Endeavor is your one way to lose this game. And Drain Punch, though it is strong, is the least amount of damage you can do to the Whimsicott while still breaking that Focus Sash.
It would be the funniest 2 HP Water Spout to win the game. We're still seeing the Endeavor and how much damage that's going to do. But again, unless this is going to magically do 56 more HP than we had seen on the previous turn, it's still not going to matter. So at this point, you've seen how much, you've already know how much damage you did, and this is going to be a safe one to now do the Heavy Slam and yet again watch the Kyogre struggle to do anything.
Yeah, Whimsicott not carrying Protect, so now Heavy Slam will knock it out. Will be able to end the game in Sanvy's favor. Of course, I guess Whimsicott could maybe go for Encore here. He doesn't have the Armor Tail to block those priority moves anymore, but we saw the Drain Punch still, do more than enough damage to 2-hit KO this Whimsicott with the terrain. Encore does come through, so I guess maybe you're saying, what if you get some unfavorable targeting with the Drain Punch? Unfortunately, into that Whimsicott. Does survive, sticks around though. Okay.
Alright. 1 HP in a Dream coming out from both of these Pokemon here, so yeah, you just need to get those last couple of hits, but alright, we're still at least, okay, Light Screen is gone, so we're gonna see a whole 4 HP come out from this Kyogre instead. But as long as you hit into this Whimsicott to KO it, you're not going to be at risk for this Endeavor, which is fine. And you're still in Trick Room for at least this one more turn. And again, you called out no Protect. So Whimsicott, if this was like, if we were one turn in the future and Trick Room was gone, this would actually be a lost game for Sanvy. But now, Whimsicott gone, Kyogre yet again nothing, and Sanvy should be able to clean this up on next turn.
I'm imagining a world where Trick Room did actually expire on that turn, and Aaron found a way to somehow win out of that position. That would have been crazy. But thankfully for Sanvy, there was that one final turn of Trick Room, and able to knock out the Whimsicott, and now, especially with the rain going away, I wonder if this Water Spout does 1 damage this time instead of 2.
Ooh, I cannot wait to see how little damage this Kyogre does. Water Spout, no rain, still Terrestrialization, just 2 HP.
2 HP in a Dream.
Yeah, the stream turned into Nightmare for Kyogre, locked into the status Water Spouts for the whole duration of the match. Oh my goodness. So yeah, Iron Hand finally will be able to clean up this match. And ladies and gentlemen, we are going to a game 3.
Great turnaround from Sanvy. That's kind of exactly what we talked about in between games 1 and 2, where if you get the Trick Room up, and the Iron Hands on the field and able to start firing off those, Quark Drive boosted attacks, it's going to be much harder for Aaron to get through that kind of a game plan, especially when the Indeedee was knocked out. You're able to get the electric terrain set up for the remainder of the game, and especially that helping hand drain punch again, almost when it KOing that Kyogre. That means that low kick, which is available to the Iron Hands instead of wild charge, still would most likely be able to knock out that Kyogre as well, maybe even without the helping hand, which is really important, I think, for both players to take into account.
This is a real detriment to this Kyogre. Like, obviously, this Choice Scarf, when you need these outspeeds, especially with how much a Water Spout in the rain with the Terra Water can do, is so nice. But really seeing the downfall of that in the position where Sanvy was allowed to set up this Trick Room, and you're the slowest thing on the field, and you just no HP, and you're just kind of cooked from there. So I'll be curious to see how this game 3 goes. We didn't really see the most change-ups in terms of the Pokemon brought, but do we think and expect a switch now in game number 3?
I'm not sure, because I really do like the Whimsicott Annihilate lead from Clipperz, just because, again, there is that threat that, okay, if you don't match my Tailwind, I'm going to Final Gambit something. But at the same time, we saw Sanvy take advantage of that pretty well in the second game, where you just go straight for the Electro Drift and put that Annihilate in a position where a one-more attack will knock it out. And then you're not really giving Clipperz much ground, because we saw, on that first game, we saw the Volt Switch, we saw the Farigiraf come in, take a little bit of damage, and then, kind of you're stuck in this position with Whimsicott and Farigiraf on the field at the same time, and that's two of your, least effective Pokemon at dealing damage, which usually is the goal when you're playing in these battles. And so I think you've got to maintain a much more offensive threat if you're Sanvy, like you did in that second game.
I love the expert analysis. Like, you want some more damage. You need some more damage, but
that is my recommendation, yes.
Thank you, Jake Muller, professional Pokemon player and caster analyst. No, I'm kidding. But it's valid advice when you're looking at this Kyogre and nothing else really happening. So we'll see if we can see maybe some more damage or energy coming out from Clipperz in this game number 3, or what adjustments made, especially to having to respect this Miraidon from Sanvy and just the amount of damage that it was doing. So going into game 3, the switch up will have to be in the play, because it's not going to be in the Pokemon, as yet again, we're running it back.
And again, you're kind of in a position here where if you're Sanvy, you need to match that Tailwind. If you're Aaron, you maybe take advantage of that and opt to not set Tailwind right away, but then if you do that, you might get locked into something else with Encore later on. So again, going to be that Tailwind match coming out from both trainers. Oh, no.
No, we're getting a light screen instead. So this is not going to necessarily help against the Annihilate in this close combat. So a lot of damage coming out here. But going on forward in the match, that will mean that any special attacks are going to be doing less. And this is an opportunity, too, since you're not taking any damage on this Whimsicott. You can set up the Tailwind a turn late. So you're going to have your Tailwind 1 turn longer than Clipperz, or maybe not even set it at all. Looking at these Pokemon in the back, we're running back again the same 4 Pokemon, but if you don't really expect to be taking the most damage on this turn, you can just set the Trick Room, and well, no matter what speed tierings the Clipperz Pokemon are, with that Tailwind, they're forced to be fast, so therefore the last to act.
That was actually really clever from Sanvy. Not going for the Tailwind this time around, going straight for that light screen, meant that this Farigiraf can come in, and either you can go straight for the Trick Room, or you can use the Armor Tail to prevent Clipperz Whimsicott from encoring your own into that light screen, and then set up your Tailwind and swaps the Iron Hands or the Miraidon back in later. Like you said, Sierra, if Tailwind does go up for Sanvy now, you kind of have it 1 turn longer than Clipperz at the end of the Tailwind, and so that could be a turn where you take advantage of that speed boost. At the same time, you could go for the Tailwind, maybe try and break that Focus Sash on Whimsicott with a weaker attack like your own Whimsicott's Moonblast. It means you're not enabling Endeavor nearly as well as you would if you brought it all the way down to Focus Sash.
So much damage done onto the Annihilate, and a swap out as, drumroll, Indeedee hits the field yet again. Love all the nicknames. Makes me have to wait for a second to see what's swapping in. So Psychic Terrain brought in, no priority for anyone. It's not going to be the only swap. Mob Switch, the Gourmet, the Miraidon back out onto the field. So that Psychic Terrain instantly gone. So any expanding forces are going to be single target, not nearly the amount of damage. And Endeavor does a good amount, but of course, will never take KO. It's only just for damage dealing. And now we have Trigger.
swap in your Miraidon and use Trick Room on the same turn is not a play I see very often, but in this case, actually was very, very smart. Again, Tailwind is up for Clippers, and you know that you have the speed advantage if you go for the Trick Room. The Miraidon on Sanvy's side should be attacking before either of these two Pokemon on Clippers' side. Nice, sequence of switches there too, because you have the Indeedee on the field with electric terrain. So if Clippers wants the electric terrain gone or the psychic terrain back up specifically, he's got to swap out the Indeedee and then bring it back in, which could leave you vulnerable to taking a lot of damage from something like the Iron Hands or the Miraidon in the process. I loved the selection of Foul Play into the Whimsicott. Pokemon that has very low attack and resist it thanks to the fairy typing, but again, you're just trying to break that focus sash without doing any damage to enable the Endeavor.
Volt switch and whew, so you're talking about Indeedee maybe wanting to swap around or anything else. It is completely eliminated. So Sanvy now gets a pivot. Indeedee's gone, which means we're never getting the psychic terrain back. And you're slowly but surely just chipping away at the rest of the team. The Annihilape's already taken so much damage, and assuming that it is this Kyogre of choice left, you are just a few HP away on this Annihilape from forcing it out onto the field in the worst of conditions. Moonblast into the freshly swapped Iron Hand, super effective, but still sitting about 2/3 of health is really nice. And especially with this Quirk Drive with the attack boost, like this Drain Punches is still going to do a lot of damage and recovery.
Especially considering, again, this Whimsicott's Focus Sash has been broken. We know the Annihilape is the final Pokemon for Clippers at barely any HP remaining, thanks to that, -1 special defense Volt Switch that it took earlier on. So something like a Psychic or even a Heavy Slam into that slot would pretty much guarantee a KO. Of course, the Kyogre a little bit more of an issue. You want to maybe focus your attention onto that. But if you're able to go for that Terra Water again on Iron Hands, you're resisting these Water Spouts. I think if you're Clippers, you maybe can't even lock into Water Spout because you might end up having some very sad spouts again for the remainder of this game, and you kind of have to start relying on Origin Pulse, which we know to not be the most accurate of attacks, and so going to be a little bit rougher of a spot here.
3 turns of Trick Room left, or just wasting them out as Annihilape hits the field yet again. With such low HP, sure they'll go down, so you'll just have 2 to go through, which is still going to be a very, very tall ask. Terrestrialization, Terra Water yet again. Moonblast already didn't do the most damage, especially with that light screen, but this is just going to secure it. So not necessarily the most surprised to see that one out. Heavy Slam. Actually, we're not even going to have to worry. That's Whimsicott gone, and Kyogre's going to be forced out into the field yet again. Burgraff still gets to Act 2 in the Psychic into such a low HP Annihilape. As Sanvy just one restricted away from closing out this match.
Really, really smart from Sanvy there as well. I think one way that you possibly can lose this game is if you go for a fighting type attack into that Kyogre and it swaps out into Annihilape, which is what Clippers was trying to catch. But by going for the Heavy Slam into the Whimsicott, you're guaranteeing a KO. It will knock out the Whimsicott, it will knock out the Annihilape regardless of any kind of swaps or terrestrializations, which brings Clippers down to 2 Pokemon and means that Kyogre can no longer swap out to dodge a low kick. So just a really smart way to close out this game, especially with the Terra Water there guaranteeing that you're not going to get knocked out by this Kyogre in the meantime.
Helping Hand, low kick, and that is Kyogre down. So Sanvy, after being down the first in the set, fight back the next 2 and take this week 2-1.
Really impressive mix-ups from Sanvy there, especially considering we had the same leads all 3 games, but the way that Sanvy played all 3 games was very different. And just goes to show the experience that he has as a player. Of course, in these in-person tournaments as well, but that translates pretty well to online events. You're playing the same game, and even if it's from the comfort of your own home. So really smart reads there from Sanvy throughout that whole match.
Not even just the same leads, but the same Pokemon brought, but being able to find
Yeah.
a win con with just a little bit of a deviation in play was just super, super well done. Especially, too, we saw in the game 2 where it was a decent switch up to the Electro Driftmarite on 6 around, but game 3 going into something like that Volt Switch instead, but not trying to match the speed. Instead, I'm just going straight for this Trick Room and really being able to take advantage of the fact that, yeah, like Clippers team kind of needs to go fast, right? So I love
Yeah.
that little switch up. So I think that was just really well done. And congratulations yet again to Sanvy.
Claiming a win for the Celestic Stars in the latter stages of the regular season here. We're at a point in NPA where every win matters. So regardless of like the weak result, if you're claiming wins for your team and giving yourself a great shot in possible tiebreakers, that's always important. So really well played by Sanvy. Congrats to him for the win.
and we still have 2 more best of 3s here on the day. So excited to get into the next one. Hopefully see some other restricteds and not doing exact a run back to, but I'm already eyeing up for the team sheets for the next one. And it looks like this will be a little bit of a power struggle between 2 of the top restricteds that we have in the format.
And we've got the run back of the Miraidon team from PatCon there, who is our reigning NAIC champion, going up against not the Pokemon Sylveon, but the trainer Sylveon, running a very similar team to what we saw, if not identical to what we saw from James Beck over in Vancouver. It's a nasty plot Calyrex Shadow Rider team with support from Pokemon like Mienshao and Clefairy.
This team 2 from Sylveon, you're just looking at the fact that Chiyu with this Beads of Ruin and really powerful attackers in this Calyrex Shadow Rider and this Flutter Mane is something you always have to give some respect to on lead. But even if you're just, okay, leave the Chiyu at home, Clefairy with this Follow Me and the Friend Guard to allow the Calyrex Shadow Rider to set up is really, really strong. And if you are thinking, okay, well, there's going to be some options on the other end, maybe something like these Dazzling Gleams to do damage, well, then you have this Mienshao with these wide guards and even just really powerful close combat. So not quite as necessary when you're not going up against other Calyrex of Shadow Riders or Calyrex Ice Riders, but still an option when we've gotten to see the Miraidon with essentially only the Terra Fairy Dazzling Gleam nowadays.
One thing that I think these types of Calyrex Shadow Rider teams can fall prey to is almost over-relying on the Calyrex for the damage. Of course, Pokemon like Fluttermane, Rillaboom, Chiyu, even the close combats from Mienshao can be putting a lot of work, but most of the time your game plan is set up Calyrex, use the other Pokemon to protect or enable it, and just win with Astral Barrage. But this team is so good at doing that I don't even know that it's even a problem anymore, especially when you're going up against a team like PatCons that I think people are very familiar with at this point. Oftentimes you're going to have those game plans in place already. Rillaboom, I think, especially going to be a big deal. Of course, shutting off the electric terrain, being a great swap into those powerful electric type moves, especially when you have something like the Urshifu there as well that can help out. And so I think going to be a fun matchup to see how kind of the Protect the Calyrex modes from Sylveon's team will go up against this known entity.
Yeah, let's start getting into this first match here between PatCon and Sylveon and kind of discussing. So you were talking to, like, people know this Miraidon team, obviously. So what are you kind of expecting from the other end with this Calyrex Shadow Rider?
I think Rillaboom comes every game, no matter what, especially specific. I mean, in general, it's very good on this team. Specifically against Miraidon teams, it's a huge part of your game plan a lot of the time, which means that we might see, we didn't get to see the Hearthflame Ogerpon, for example, come out from this team in the last match, and that's one of the best answers to Rillaboom that we have in the format. So I'm expecting we get to see a little bit of a different look at this Miraidon team at the same time, too.
Let's get in the match and see exactly where that is, as the classic of Calyrex Shadow leads is coming out. That's Clefairy next to the big bad horse, Miraidon, and that Ogerpon you were talking about on the opposing end. So if we are looking at a potential setup, the Clefairy can redirect that away, but of course Miraidon does have spread damage, even if it's not going to do as much damage as something like an Electro Drift would.
We also do see Sing on Clefairy on Sylveon's team. That's something that some trainers opt for, and some do not. A little bit of not the most reliable of moves, considering the 55% accuracy. Of course, the electric terrain will stop that as well, but Rillaboom swapping in here, I think we maybe are seeing an attempt at a Sing right off the bat.
Oh no, it is the most dreaded but also funniest of moves. But Rillaboom coming in, this of course brings to the train, and Miraidon with that Volt Switch will mean this Pokemon is in the back to re-override that at a different point as Frigorap hits the field. But we'll get a move from this Ogerpon, but I am still looking at this Clefairy. Ooh, Ivy Cudgel into that Rillaboom though, so you get the Grassy Train once, and that is now going to be overridden by that Electric Train once that Miraidon comes back in for the rest of the game. But we're talking about the Sing, and it actually connects. 55% accurate, but it comes on through Frigorap. Instantly, it falls asleep. So you lose the Pokemon, and losing the Rillaboom definitely sucks, but at least you get something from it. And now, when you're staring down this, this Calyrex Shadow Rider, one Pokemon being asleep on the opposing end, this definitely looks a little bit better for this horse.
It does. One Pokemon being asleep and the other only having single target attacks means that Clefairy can very safely redirect. You get the chance to go straight for that nasty plot, which will then allow you to hit for huge damage later on in the game. you're trading your Rillaboom entirely, which it's tough to know whether that's a good trade or not, because as soon as Miraidon comes back in, you have no way to remove that electric terrain. But if you can take advantage of it on these next couple turns, it might just be worth it.
Terastallization from this Heartflame Ogerpon. So, of course, this is going for absolute damage. And with that body aspect, that's a raise to the attack as well to make sure you're doing as much to this little Clefairy onto the opposing end. Try and punish it for its sins of putting that Farigiraf to sleep. Nasty plot. So, +2 to this Calyrex Shadow Rider. A lot of damage incoming on the next turn. Let's see if Clefairy, though. Ivy Cudgel +1 attack from this Ogerpon. And that is no critical hit, too. So absolutely no chance. It is eliminated.
And now if you're Sylveon, you're starting to wonder, okay, I need these trades to become worth it very, very quickly. You're down to the 2 to 4 Pokemon disadvantage after 2 turns. Now Chiyu does come in, so probably the best Pokemon to be your last remaining. This Shadow Rider Calyrex is very, very threatening with that nasty plot. But fortunately for PatCon, Farigiraf is one of the better checks to it because it is immune to those Astral Barrages. Chi will do a lot of work here, probably enable this Astral Barrage to 1-hit KO. Definitely the Miraidon, almost definitely this Ogerpon as well with that Beads of Ruin. And the Iron Hands might be able to stomach some, but you're not going to be doing too much back, especially considering Draining Kiss is on the table for the Shadow Rider as well. You kind of need the Chiyu to do the work into this Farigiraf with those Dark Pulses to be able to... Oh, no, it doesn't even have Dark Pulse. It's got Snarl, Heat Wave, Overheat, Taunt. So I guess Taunt, actually, be able to stop that Trick Room, which could be helpful.
Taunt would be nice, or you go for the damage. There's a couple of options for this Chiyu. Calyrex Shadow Rider, that's the Terastallization into the Fairy type here. So if you're also just looking at damage, well, this is a way to do that. Spiky Shield from Ogerpon, though, making sure it stays through this turn unscathed. But I'm interested with where the other is targeting. It will be the Astral Barrage, so with the Spiky Shield, as well as just the natural immunity that this Farigiraf has, means this +2 special attack, nothing happens there but that Taunt. So even if their Farigiraf wakes up, it won't be able to set the Trick Room, and this Calyrex is still set up. It stays asleep, too, so now you just get a free hit into it on this next turn.
I like the Terastallization there as well, because if the Farigiraf tried to read through the Taunt, was able to wake up and went for a foul play into the Calyrex, that would have been a lot of damage right off the bat into that Calyrex, which you may not be able to make up, given that you, again, are at a 2 to 4 Pokemon disadvantage. Taunt making sure that Trick Room can't go up, and this Calyrex will have the speed advantage for the rest of the game. Seems like a great idea, but Iron Hands is going to have to come in and take a big Astral Barrage for its trouble here.
Yeah, it's going to take the hit a lot better than other Pokemon would. It has that Assault Vest. Won't take the most, but it still just doesn't feel great. Snarl into the Farigiraf brings it almost to about half. Of course, the Iron Hands still, that is not doing the most damage. Special attack drop on both the Pokemon, of course. Iron Hands doesn't matter. Farigiraf, that is going to be a full 3 turns of sleep. So guaranteed to wake up on the next, if I am indeed counting correctly here. But still,
I believe you're right. Yeah.
Okay. I'm glad the counting on my fingers is working out here, but that's still so much damage from the opposing end. At least you get a fake out onto not even the Chiyu has Covert Cloak, so you're just slow and you've taken damage and it's about to hurt.
Yeah, the Chiyu's Covert Cloak is really important here, because if you do try to fake out the Calyrex, of course, being a Fairy type now, it is susceptible to it. But Chiyu is free to go for something like a Heat Wave or even an Overheat to try and knock out this Iron Hands. You're not really worried about Trick Room still, because the Taunt is still active. And Farigiraf swapping out here means that, this Miraidon coming in, if Iron Hands doesn't fake out the Calyrex, will likely be taking an Astral Barrage and getting knocked out.
Which isn't necessarily what you want to see. Cork Drive, Attack Raise for this Iron Hands. So it will be doing a little bit more damage as fake out. Yes, gotta keep this Calyrex Shadow Rider honest. Now it's all going to be on the little fish. A Snarl yet again. So again, Iron Hands isn't taking much damage. Right on, that'll bring it down to 1/3, but most importantly, too, that special attack drop.
The special attack drop really nice, and I think the chip damage there also very important. Just in case you think the Miraidon might be a little bit bulkier and able to take something like that +2 Astral Barrage, there is theoretically a world here where the Miraidon attacks before the Shadow Rider. Sometimes people running the Terra Fairy Draining Kiss set will be a little bit bulkier and a little bit less fast. So if you're trained to be max speed on that Miraidon, you could possibly go straight for an Electro Drift and try and knock it out. But that Snarl coming in immediately, I think, is very important because it means that if the speed advantage is in Miraidon's favor, you will be, taking a much less powerful Electro Drift.
All coming down to the speed tierings for those two, because the Draining Kiss into that Miraidon would be absolutely devastating. Iron Hands out, Farigiraf back out onto the field here, but I'm staring at these restricted. It is going to be the Astral Barrage. The Calyrex Shadow Rider is going to act first, and with the +2 special attack, again, Farigiraf doesn't matter, but Miraidon, that's a world of hurt.
It really is, and that, I think, almost seals the game in Sylveon's favor here. It was a kind of a interesting start because you lost two of your most important Pokemon that you used to protect that Calyrex right off the bat in the form of that Rillaboom and Clefairy. But thankfully that Sing coming through and being enough to put that Farigiraf to sleep, prevent Trick Room until you can get that Chi-Yu in to go for those taunts, meant that this Calyrex, it really hasn't seemed very threatened since it got that nasty plot up and it lost those two kind of protective teammates.
Now Ogerpon, Iron Hands back out onto the field, and we could see again the fake out into the Calyrex Shadow Rider, and then this Ogerpon go for some damage. But this Chi-Yu, of course, can't be faked out. It's still threatening a decent little chunk of damage here. So I have to see just how much way this Ogerpon can do and what the Chi-Yu can do in return. The fact that it has Terastallize means the Chi-Yu, if it is going for a fire type move, it will be resisted by that Ogerpon. So see how much damage output, and of course you can just protect past this fake out, so you're not even gonna have to risk losing that Pokemon on this turn.
Really smart protect there. If you're PatCon, I think your chance at winning this game is hoping Sylveon doesn't protect that and lets you go for fake out Ivy Cudgel. So you just gotta go for it, hope for the choke essentially. But protecting the Calyrex there means that you're guaranteed to stick around, get off an Astral Barrage. And at this point, I think it's +3, which should be more than enough to KO both of these two remaining Pokemon and give Sylveon the 1-0 game lead.
Especially at the speed tiering. So we'll make it official. Astral Barrage comes on through into both of these Pokemon. Double KO, easy peasy for the horse. Up one in the set. So the fact that it was so reliant, not even just reliant, but like this game was so heavily influenced by this Clefairy hitting that Sing.
Mm-hmm.
What do we then see going into this game too? Because that's a 55% accurate. This is not reliable. It's not like a sleep powder where you're like, well, I'm actually really decently favored to hit this. You can't base a game plan around that. So do you feel confident enough with having lost two Pokemon to run it back?
But not only did it hit the Sing, it got the full 3 turns of sleep as well, which, 55% times a third. That's like a 20% chance of that happening. So I don't know that the 3-turn sleep was necessary given the way the game went, especially getting the Chi-Yu and going for that taunt and stopping the Trick Room before the sleep even wore off. But it's not something I think you should be relying on, oh, it happened game 1, so obviously I'll just do the same thing game 2 and it'll work out. Probably not the best idea because a lot of things could have gone wrong for Sylveon in that game that didn't. But again, I think that just knowing how to trade your resources effectively, on the first turn, the Electric Terrain was up, which would have prevented Sing from working because Electric Terrain blocks anything from going to sleep. Switching in your Rillaboom, knowing that if this works, I'm in a very strong spot. And even though you lost the Rillaboom, you lost the Grassy Surge, it being knocked out when it swapped in was actually, I think, a bonus for Sylveon because then you could immediately have the Calyrex back in and go for that nasty plot. Whereas if the Rillaboom, survived that turn, you would have had to U-turn it out. You're kind of wasting some of those sleep turns. So making really great use of what did happen, but I'm not sure that it's a super reliable game plan.
Yeah, because you bring that Rillaboom in to swap off this electric terrain. You lose the Rillaboom because we saw the Ivy Cudgel into that slot from the get-go. And then this thing doesn't hit. You just gave up your only piece to override terrain. You lost the Pokemon. And you're sitting there then... Well, then you either have to be bringing in the Chi-Yu, which is not going to appreciate the Miraidon, or you have to bring in, well, the neutral Calyrex Shadow Rider, which then puts us back in the same situation as the first turn, which definitely doesn't feel great. So I'm intrigued to see for Sylveon where things switch up as we head into game number 2 of this set. Big switch up! We're talking about duos. Fluttermane and Chi-Yu is definitely one now to face off against this Ogerpon and this Miraidon. Hadron Engine, that's the electric terrain. But for the Fluttermane, we still get to see this booster energy A lot of them more so going for this speed to make sure that it can outspeed and be the fastest thing onto the field. Is that going to be the case here? Yes. So this Flutter Mane definitely has some speed to it.
I do like this switch from Sylveon here. You're not putting yourself in a position where, okay, if I don't hit Sing, this is a very bad turn for me. And Chiyu Flutter Mane is also a very, very strong offensive combo here. Icy Wind off the bat will lower the speeds of both of these two Pokemon, which should allow Chiyu to act first, possibly get off a big Snarl to lower the damage from this Miraidon.
And that's exactly what's going to happen. Connect on both. And then, yeah, both being brought down to about half health, just over half health. But notably, the special attack dropped. Now, into this Flutter Mane.
Oh!
That's not even going to matter, actually. That Flutter Mane just gets completely taken care of. This Miraidon doesn't care about the special attack drop. And that's Sylveon down a Pokemon in the very first turn.
That wasn't even a critical hit. I almost thought it would be. That might have been the difference of the Beads of Ruin. You know, it does unfortunately affect its partner. So the Flutter Mane with that lowered special defense, able to be one-hit KO'd here. But again, now you're in a spot where this Calyrex Shadow Rider just comes in. Because the Miraidon is at -1 special attack and speed, you have the option to go straight for another Snarl, put it down to -2. You have to worry about the attacks coming out from that Ogerpon. But Calyrex bulky enough to probably take at least one if it needs to. Now you have the option to either go straight for Astral Barrage, which could, combined with Snarl, be enough damage for 2 KOs here, or try and capitalize on PatCon, playing a little bit more defensively and immediately set up one of those nasty plots. So again, an early trade that might look like it's not in Sylveon's favor, but could, depending on what they opted for on this turn, could pay dividends.
At least with the Farigiraf coming in, if you are expecting this Astral Barrage, this is a Pokemon that's going to be immune. But if you're also expecting the Snarl, well, that one's not going to be quite as great as Astral Barrage. The Ogerpon has taken a significant amount of damage, but we haven't had an opportunity to set up with this Calyrex yet. Not going to matter. First KO means that's going to be the first Grimnay boost for the little horsey. Now the follow-up from the Chiyu. Go for the Snarl for honest damage. Heatwave is also going to do a significant amount, bringing Farigiraf to just below half.
Thanks to the single target damage from Heatwave 2, that might even be range for one more Snarl to knock it out. Whimsicott, the choice of Pokemon coming in for PatCon here. I think you got to respect that. You have the chance to go straight for something like an Encore, even a Tailwind to get the speed in your advantage. But I think more importantly, like you're saying here, Trick Room being eyed up from Pat to make sure that your Miraidon can attack before this Calyrex on Sylveon's end. I do love the choice to go straight for the Astral Barrage there. You could maybe try and get cute and go for a nasty plot, but if you take an Ivy Cudgel for your troubles, you might be in a position where this Farigiraf and Whimsicott can much more easily pick it off. You don't even need a nasty plot when you can just get the KO with the Astral Barrage and get that Grimnay boost as well. So you get the knockout, you get the +1 boost, and now you're still a big threat while not having lost any HP.
A lot of decision here between the Trick Room and the Tailwind. And rightfully so, the Farigiraf having taken so much damage on the swap in. If you're all in on this Trick Room and the Farigiraf goes down and you also lose this Whimsicott because of, well, you were trying to set up the other one. Of course, you're not going to Tailwind and Trick Room on the same turn. Be huge. So I end up to just go for the Tailwind, safe in the end. So this Miraidon, even if it was slower than the Calyrex Shadow Rider before, will be going faster once it does swap in. Does it help you through this turn, though? Draining Kiss into the Farigiraf, it is gone.
Draining Kiss, thanks to the boost from the Terrestrialization and the Beads of Ruin, is enough to just KO that Farigiraf from about half HP, get the Grimnay boost to go up to 2 special attack boosted stages, and the taunt coming through here. I really like that, because now that Whimsicott has set up that Tailwind, it really wants to be using moves, like Encore to mess with game plans, even the Light Screen to prevent some damage from that Astral Barrage, but no longer an option because it now is forced to Moonblast. The Miraidon comes in here. You have the speed advantage. Electro Drift, especially considering the Beads of Ruin, acting on the Calyrex Shadow Rider as well, is a huge threat. Especially since the Whimsicott does have to Moonblast, you may as well double up there, right? And so, position where this Calyrex is very threatened by these attacks, while still, I think if Astral Barrage goes through, the game immediately ends. So you kind of have to worry about it. But of course, Chiyu, nothing to be scoffing at either here.
What's so dangerous with this Miraidon, especially if you are thinking there's a Clefairy in the back, if all of a sudden there's a Protect, Chiyu goes down, or swaps, then you just locked into a single target. Well, that's going to be something that completely shuts things down. Instead, though, it'll be Rillaboom, but this is also still not great for those electric type attacks because
Yeah.
this is now going to be the grassy terrain on the board, and you have Fake Out available on this next turn. Calyrex Shadow Rider protects. Moonblast into, yeah, the Rillaboom's not going to be the damage you want. And confirmation, Electro Drift is the only move that this Pokemon can use for the rest of the match, locked in with that choice specs. You have no option of protecting. This Whimsicott is, well, it can only Moonblast, so a Fake Out is safe because you don't have to worry about an Encore. So yeah, you can just shut down one of these Pokemon and just attack with the Calyrex Shadow Rider.
Well done from Sylveon there, knowing that Rillaboom was in the back. The taunt on Whimsicott is huge because you were able to freely protect that Calyrex, swap in the Rillaboom to get fake out pressure, and know that you can't be encored in to protect. Now a simple fake out into the Miraidon will stop it from dealing any damage. Moonblast will come through, of course, with the Ghost typing is immune to fake out, but that was never going to be the target anyway, because the Miraidon was the bigger threat. And now Astral Barrage will be able to bring those Whimsicott down to Focus Sash and deal a hefty amount to Miraidon as well.
Yeah, this 1 HP Whimsicott's not going to fare too well up against a plus a million Calyrex Shadow Rider, as well as just a simple Grassy Glide from the Rillaboom. So huge congratulations there. Of course, you go for it, because why not, just in case. Play for your any out. But yeah, Whimsicott not nearly as scary as Miraidon. So just a couple moves away. Or just one move away from locking up the match, but that was just so well played. Even with the little switch ups, I was a little worried after seeing the Flutter Mane go down on the first turn.
Yeah.
In this fashion, it did, but you don't need the Flutter Mane. The rest of the Pokemon's enough.
Well, and that one Icy Wind kind of did exactly what it needed to do as well. It put the Shiyu in a spot where it was going to be faster than everything on Patcon's side of the field and able to exert pressure both with the Beads of Ruin and with its own attacks, the Overheat, the Heat Wave, the Snarl, all very, very strong coming from that Shiyu. And so just a very beautifully played set from Sylveon, showcasing, this team has a lot of different ways to enable the Calyrex Shadow Rider and doesn't just rely on hitting Sings off the bat. So yeah, it's just really smart use of the different Pokemon on that team.
It's nice when you do hit a Sing, but not
Of
needed,
course.
which is the most important thing. And that was the big question going into game 2 is, where are the adjustments being made so that you don't have to rely on one of the most unreliable, technically positive to hit moves in the game? And Sylveon, great answer to that. So I love to see that. So congratulations for the 2-0 up against the reigning NAIC champion.
And also remaining undefeated this NPA. Sylveon was 4-0 for their personal record going into this match and had a huge test against PatCon, but passed it with flying colors, moving up to 5-0 in individual games. Been a great asset for the Snowball Blizzards throughout this season.
There's only one more game remaining for the broadcast for this week. And this one I'm really excited to get into. This one looks all cool, all quirky. This should be fun. So for Uncle Lou, we got this Dondozo Tatsugiri. We got Ability Shield Koraidon, as well as this Galarian Wheezing Chiyu Fluttermane. This looks dreadful to face. I'm excited to see how Mancuso goes up against this, playing the Zacian Regidrago and Tornadus.
I'm very glad I'm seeing Uncle Lou use this team here and not at some of the locals that we both attend in person. Because if I went up against this, I would be terrified, annoyed, like scared, confused. This is a really cool team. The Ability Shield Koraidon is a nice touch with that Galarian Weezing. That kind of gives away that Weezing might be a pretty big player on this team, and that you want to make sure that you're able to use that ability or a Calcum Pulse on your Koraidon to make sure that you're getting the sun up and boosting your damage. But going into Mancuso's team too, this is another unique take on the Zacian Regidrago stuff that we've seen kind of throughout both of the lifespans of Regulation G. And Ditto is a Pokemon that's picked up a lot in the second half of Reg G since we've returned to it after we played a little bit of Regulation H. Allows you to have two different restricted Pokemon in some scenarios, or just have two very strong Pokemon, like two Urshifu or two Fluttermane, depending on kind of the teams you're facing up against. So gonna be fun to see how these match up.
Especially too, some Dittos will go for that Choice Scarf instead. So if you copy a Pokemon, you're always guaranteed to outspeed it. This one is a Focus Sash, so you'll live a hit. But this pairs really well with the Tornadus on the team that has the Tailwind to be able to set things up. And notably, this is also a Tornadus that has the Rain Dance. So when we are looking at this Koraidon that wants to set up the sun on the opposing end, that's a good way to shut that down. Of course, The Galarian Weezing would shut things down like that Prankster, as well as the Imposter. If you are thinking that this Galarian Weezing is going to come, that could be a little bit dangerous. But if we think that Galarian Weezing's stuck at home or not going to hit the field at the right time, then there's the possibility there. But definitely a little bit of risks involved. But I'm excited to see how this plays out and how to play around this Galarian Weezing.
Let's jump right into this third and final match of our NPA broadcast this afternoon. Again, the Regidrago, something that is capable of doing a lot of damage to both targets. It's got the move Dragon Energy, which is identical to Water Spout. You know, the higher HP you have remaining, the higher base power of the attack. The Life Orb, an interesting combo with it, because you're obviously boosting the power of that attack pretty heavily, but at the same time lowering it every time that you're attacking. So you got to make sure that first Dragon Energy is, very, very effective. Just by merit of attacking, you are lowering its power by 10% every time.
And this Dragon Energy would do a lot of work against most Pokemon on the team, but I'm eyeing up with that Flutter Mane, especially to, first off, just natural immunity. Second, this is one that does have the Dazzling Gleam and can hit both targets, or just a very powerful Moonblast. And Regidrago also wouldn't appreciate an Icy Wind, so there's definitely a couple of really powerful options to just deal with that Regidrago, especially considering it doesn't have quite the same speeds, doesn't have the greatest speed stat. And if you're not enabling it to pop off in a speedy condition or having a redirector next to it, it can kind of struggle to thrive.
It's also pretty important into the Dondozo, if it does get set up with that Commander Tatsugiri. A Life Orb, Dragon's Maw, Draco Meteor is doing a ton of damage to it, even with the boosted special defense. And thanks to the Unaware ability on Dondozo, you're hitting for full power Draco Meteors every time. Even though you're lowering your special attack, the Unaware ignores that special attack drop, which is one of the drawbacks of using that ability. So if you have to worry about breaking through that Dondozo, Regidrago could be very important.
All right, time to get into our final set of matches here for this week of NPA. Mancuso going up against Uncle Fu. Koraidon going up against Zacian. Koraidon right away in the lead next to this Galarian Weezing with the Regidrago and the Tornadus on the opposing end. Neutralizing Gas. All the abilities are gone except for the Koraidon. Ability Shield, that's going to allow the sun to shine. And this Koraidon can right away output a lot of damage. And now you have to make a choice on the other end. You do want to kind of get that speed. You want to shut down this Koraidon. And you also don't have Prankster available. So you're not going to be going necessarily the fastest.
Yeah, Prankster being down means that Koraidon, if it's trained to be as fast as it can be, will outspeed this Tornadus. Maybe even get a one-hit KO with the sun-boosted Flare Blitzes, and will allow Lu the speed advantage for the rest of this game. But if you do attack these Tornadoes with your Koraidon, you have to worry about this Regidrago, which is very ready to punish you with a possible Dragon-type attack.
Well, we're going to see the Terrestrialization into this Fire type for the Koraidon. One of those Terra types that don't necessarily change when we talk about this restricted, and of course can boost any Fire type attacks coming out from it. Is right away Flare Blitz in the sun, Terra Fire boosted into this Tornadus on the opposing end. And with no Focus Sash, it has absolutely no chance. Mancuso is not going to have that speed on his end. But now, this Regidrago has been left unchecked. Draco Meteor, but that's going to be a miss, and that must be the most devastating first turn of the match. Stream Steam, that is so much damage into this Regidrago. Wow, that is terrible.
That is really rough. The Life Orb power boosted Draco Meteor, even with the Terrestrialization, probably enough to cleanly one-hit KO that Koraidon after the Flare Blitz recoil. And now instead, you're left with this Koraidon that, again, still has its ability, despite everything else having it shut down by the neutralizing gas. The Strange Steam doing a lot of damage to Regidrago now, so Dragon Energy pretty much off the table entirely. If you want to be going for those Dragon-type attacks, you've got to rely on that Draco Meteor, which, again, has that 10% miss chance, and even if it does connect, will lower your special attack for the remainder of this game. So, smart targeting by Lu there. I think getting the Tornadus is really nice, just to eliminate the threat of those Prankster Tailwinds later on. Just unfortunately for Mancuso, that Koraidon sticks around.
That's so rough. I feel like the 90% accurate is a lie when you're talking with the Draco Meteor. There is absolutely no way, but okay, just what you can do for the rest of this match. Terrestrialization onto this Ogerpon and a Follow Me. So this is going to redirect a Flare Blitz, and it's going to take the hit a lot better now going into a not very resistant. So that's why we're seeing the Koraidon swap off of that Collision Course instead. And still so much damage. Final move from the other Pokemon will take it down, but going for a more accurate hit from this Regidrago, at least you are going to be taking care of this Koraidon. Maybe if you opted for that this first turn, this could have been a very different little board state right now. But one final move from this Weezing set is the Poison Gas. So both of these Pokemon now poisoned. This Ogerpon has taken a lot of damage. It's just how much that takes through and whether it's going to be surviving for just one more turn in this match. 24 will go to 2. So one more turn for this Ogerpon.
Problem is it does only have one more turn exactly if it stays on the field. And with Mancuso down to 3 Pokemon, evening the score there with that Earth Power, which luckily cannot miss, making sure that you're actually favorably trading damage on this turn. The Collision Course, a very smart opt for Lou there if you want to go for damage into that Ogerpon. Flare Blitz in the sun is very tempting, but if Mancuso does go for that Terrestrialization, you have to imagine that Collision Course is the much, much stronger option. Again, it's just a tough spot here. You've taken so much damage with both of these 2 Pokemon. If Ogerpon stays on the field, it will be knocked out by Poison. And we see the Tatsugiri come in, which means that it's probably very safe to assume that the Dondozo is Lou's 4th Pokemon as well.
Well, even at this point, all these Pokemon have Protect, so you can just go for this double Protect if the Ogerpon sticks around, gets KO'd. Hornleech is set into the Weezing, but if it doesn't recover enough damage, which it won't with only 15, it's still going to be KO'd. Earth Power, so at least get the double up. You do get to equalize just a little bit, but the Tatsugiri was safe. This Ogerpon's going to self-KO, and assumingly it is going to be a Dondozo that comes out next, which means you have a Regidrago on a timer, and then just one more Pokemon to contend with.
One does get the attack boost from the Embody aspects finally. Just unfortunately a little too late as it immediately gets knocked out by that poison. The Hornleech was a great idea. You got to break the Focus Sash on the Weezing somehow. The Earth Power will clean it up from wherever it is. But unfortunately not enough to prevent it from being knocked out by the poison alongside that Regidrago. So it's going to be 2 versus 1 in Uncle Lou's favor, but assuming it is that Dondozo, I think that might even count for more than 2 Pokemon at that point.
Yeah, this Dondozo is going to put in some work here. So it is still restricted for Mancuso, but of course this is going to be attacking on, the regular, just physical aspect. And this Dondozo does have the Rocky Helmet. It also has Rest and Sleep Talk, so something that can try and just outlive and outlast as long as possible. And even does have something like this Earthquake to just deal some really decent damage into the Zacian.
Even if you're going, like, let's say you trade damage for a couple turns and then you opt to go for the rest, the Rocky Helmet on the Dondozo will force the Zacian to be damaging itself, even more than it's dealing to the Dondozo here. So a rough position for the Zacian to be in. It is a very, very strong Pokemon, just not strong enough to break through this Dondozo.
Yeah, absolutely not. Saving that Dondozo right up until the bitter end, and then having no answer, no check to it. Uncle Lou up 1 to the set. If he takes this, I have some bad news for you at your locals, because you might see this team more often than you'd like. And that was a rough one to go up against. Of course, when you are looking at a Draco Meteor miss on that very first turn, and a Koraidon that was then able to fire off one more attack into that Ogerpon Heartflame, maybe if we saw the deviation, considering that little chip that happened from the Flare Blitz to KO that Tornadus, and you've gone for the Earth Power right away, maybe you could have had enough tools to try and contend with the rest of the team, but that's still so tough when you have these tools like this Weezing. Even just the Poison Gas for that double KO due to poison on that one turn was really rough.
I mean, it's a great use of that neutralizing gas right off the bat, because sometimes a team like Mancuso's can be a little bit reliant on that Tailwind to make sure that your very strong Pokemon are attacking first. A Zacian and Regidrago and Tailwind are much, much more threatening than a Zacian and Regidrago without it. And without the ability to get that Tailwind up, I think Lou made the right choice in targeting that Tornadus, just to make sure that that couldn't be a possibility. Of course, benefited from dodging that Draco Meteor, but like you said, Sierra, the option for the Earth Power was there. Even the option to go straight for Dragon Energy is there. If you're taking damage as Regidrago from that Koraidon right off the bat, it means that you're not taking any from, rather, it means that Tornadus is not taking any, so maybe then you're willing to trade some damage on Regidrago for the option of that Tailwind, and then later on you can go for something like that Earth Power, or even that Draco Meteor.
It's a little risky, because if there is the hit, but I guess if you get the hit into that Pokemon, then you're able to have one move with this Tornadus, then go ahead and set up a Tailwind, so you're not outspeed. So it's just kind of like, all right, do you want to give that up? What's really difficult is just the fact that the Galarian Weezing is the partner Pokemon next to choice, so you know that's going to be immunity. You can only really hit that one Pokemon, only hit the partner Pokemon, the Koraidon, but I guess if that's what you need to do to get past that first turn, at least you're not a choice spec, so you're not locked in, so you can change the move after that first turn, which is going to be a little bit of a potential saving grace.
I do like the emphasis on the first turn of this game. A lot of times, something like a Koraidon Weezing lead could lend itself to not exactly 50-50s, but like huge momentum swings on the first turn of the game. So if you are able to run it back, but get the first turn, a little bit more in your favor, that can mean that the rest of the game is much easier for you. Especially since, Lou saved the Dondozo Tatsugiri for the end game when Mancuso had already lost most of the tools he had available to himself. Yeah, if you have to face down Dondozo with just Zacian, we're already seeing that that's just a non-possibility. So maybe try and save some of those tools for later on and trick some more favorable trades in the beginning of the game.
Game number 2 here, last one of the week. Weezing makes appearance yet again, but it's going to be next to the Chi-Yu as Ogerpon and this Regidrago. So all abilities shut down at this point, and the Chi-Yu a very different threat than the Koraidon, especially not having nearly the same speed as the Pokemon would. The Ditto in the back is so risky. I love it, but that does mean that you need to get rid of this Weezing sooner rather than later, but you can't let the Chi-Yu go unchecked either.
Of course, yeah, this Chi-Yu, even though Beads of Ruin is not active, it is holding that Choice Scarf and able to fire off some pretty strong attacks, even without lowering those special defenses. And of course, you can always swap out the Weezing if you really want to. Swap into something like Koraidon would activate both the Orichalcum Pulse to set up the Sun and the Chi-Yu's Beads of Ruin ability, and allow it to hit for some very, very strong fire-type damage.
Weezing will just protect, though, as a follow me. So if there is a single target coming out from the Chi-Yu, or if the Weezing had gone for an attack, but Snarl, Regidrago, that's going to be the damage. And there's also the special attack drop. And when we're talking about this dragon energy, impact you need to make wouldn't be there. Earth Power instead, though, but still, with that special attack drop, is not going to be enough. So we do have the opportunity to hit that again into this next turn. There is also just the swap, considering you wouldn't be really doing too much if there is another round of Snarls, which it either has to swap or Snarl, considering the Choice Scarf.
Yeah, Zacian actually a very, very safe switch here. Will resist Snarl. It is resistant to the strange steam coming out from Weezing and is immune to the poison gas. So this is one of the most ideal positions you could have Zacian in, especially if this Chi-Yu stays on the field and Uncle Lou doesn't try to make a more proactive swap. It means that Zacian will be having a pretty good time on this next turn. Chi-Yu does swap out, however, into the Dondozo. Exactly what you don't want to see if you're this Zacian.
Yeah, we're having a swap a piece here. Regidrago swapping out Zacian to hit the field to face down this bad Dondozo on the other end. But at least if it is a poison gas from the Weezing to try and set up the Dondozo for a good position, well, it's going to be a Zacian that does just resist that, of course. Will be that poison gas. Spiky Shield on the one, and just a Steel type on the other. So nothing to happen, at least at that point. So that's going to be at least better. And, ooh, I'm excited. We're actually eyeing up the Ditto swap than expecting to swap out here.
That could be really cool if the Ditto swaps in here for the Ogerpon. Well, no, I don't know, because the neutralizing gas is still in effect, and Imposter won't activate, so the Ditto won't transform, which means that if Uncle Lou then swaps the Weezing out to Tatsugiri, we still get the combination with the Commander. So it's funny how these abilities interact, because if you are able to transform into the Weezing with your Ditto, then you can prevent the Tatsugiri and Dondozo from combining for the rest of the game. But you do have to make sure that the Ditto is actually able to transform, which won't happen unless it uses the attack transform, which is very difficult to pull off with your Ditto.
Gonna go for it is the little... Oh! Alright, swap. It depends on what's happening on the other end, because if it is the Tatsugiri, well... We'll see. Zacian, of course, abilities back line. Tatsugiri hits the field. So we'll get to see that Commander come out. And then, well, Ditto's just kind of stuck there. You can't just click the transform and become a Dondozo on the next turn. That's also a thing. You get to have all of those boosts. You'd be able to... Yeah. I don't...
You could, yeah.
Ditto's a silly one. Ditto's a silly one.
Unfortunately, you have to actually be able to use that attack. And with Earthquake coming through here, I think if you're Lou, you need to prioritize not letting Ditto attack, which is one of the phrases I did not think I would ever say when talking about Pokemon. But unfortunately for Mancuso, Imposter's not an ability that will like reactivate in that sense. When the neutralizing gas goes away, I think it only activates as soon as Ditto hits the field, if I'm not mistaken. And so even if the wheezing goes away, there's nothing to transform into. You have to use the attack transform, which, here, because the Focus Sash was broken by the Earthquake, this is a pretty easy Earthquake, or even an Order Up into that slot to boost your attack by one stage, and make sure that this Ditto can't become the boosted Dondozo itself.
At this point, I end up with Protect on the Zacian and just let this poor little blue blob just face its maker is probably the way to go. Get a free swap, something to maybe try and help with this Dondozo just a little bit better as yet another Earthquake. Wouldn't see why you wouldn't go for that at this point. So, yeah, Ditto's down. Not the adjustment for this match, but you get a free swap and something to maybe try and help out just a smidge better.
Unfortunately for Mancuso, I see him having a hard time breaking through this Dondozo once again. Especially knowing that it's not the final two Pokemon this time. The Chi-Yu and the Weezing are still in the back, ready to come clean up whatever might be left after Dondozo gets knocked out. There's no, Tornadus on Mancuso's team. You can't get the speed advantage later on. So even if you do manage to break through this Dondozo, if you're maybe able to get off a big Dragon-type attack here, it is faster. So do a big chunk, but it is able to survive.
Yeah, that Life Orb not going to be enough. And you do have that drop going on forward. Earthquake. Yeah, you're already taken a lot of damage. Zacian goes down. And you are faster, so at least you can hit another attack. It is unaware on the other end, so you'll be good there. But you're still just taking so much damage at this point.
You've taken a lot of damage. You're in a spot now, actually, where you're probably able to knock out Dondozo with the Ogerpon, and then let Regidrago take a knockout on the Tatsugiri as they uncombine after Dondozo gets knocked out. But is that enough is the question. This Regidrago, as it attacks, will be losing, looks like 27 HP at a time. So it only has 2 attacks remaining before it knocks itself out with the Life Orb recoil, not even considering the possibility of it taking an attack from either Pokemon on loose side of the field, too.
And that would also be, too, where attack drop's not going to matter into the special attack drop won't matter into the Dondozo, but target it into the Tatsugiri. That's one that can maybe hurt just a little bit. So Terrestrialization in the closing moments of this match, Embody Aspect to get as much damage as possible coming out from this little Ogerpon as the Horn Leech. The Dondozo had so little, but when you do have all these boosted moves, you really got to make sure critical hit's going to help as well. So you get a little damage back, and this is going to force the Tatsugiri out onto the field to see just how much damage this -2 Dondozo will get to do into it. It will connect, and it's not a Focus Sash on the other end that will get the KO.
It's the KO, but again, you're now at -4 special attack. Unaware is gone. Those special attack drops will be sticking. And of course, you are down to, 6 HP left. And so any kind of attack will be able to knock you out. And we have the Weezing and the Chi-Yu there from Uncle Lou to try and close out this game. I think especially, because this Chi-Yu is the Choice Scarf set, you're able to lock into something like Dark Pulse instead of going for an attack that maybe has a little bit of a mischance. Again, one of the sometimes drawbacks of using Chi-Yu is those slightly inaccurate moves. But Dark Pulse plus something like, the Poison Gas, even a Strange Steam might be able to finish off Ogerpon. At this point, as soon as Regidrago attacks, it knocks itself out, so you kind of don't even need to target it.
Yeah, it'll just be how much assumingly a Dark Pulse from the Chi-Yu gets to do. Of course, you're not going to have the Beads of Ruin because the abilities are shut down, but that is still a Chi-Yu, and that is still going to be a same type attack bonus attack. So Regidrago forced to protect on this turn to have Ogerpon bear everything, but it's going to be a Snarl instead. So Ogerpon will be able to take this hit really, really well, and of course, be able to clap back with something into this Chi-Yu. And considering how much damage it has taken, Ivy Cudgel now into the slot will be able to take care of this fish and bring it down to just this Weezing as the final Pokemon. Of course, there is stall methods to this, Poison Gas being one of them, and that's going to make sure the Regidrago's good. You still just have your one attack, but the Ogerpon's going to be poisoned, and that's going to be putting a little bit of a timer on the match.
The timer has started counting, but I actually think Mancuso might have a way to break through for the remainder of this game. The Weezing might need a double, if not a triple, protect for this Ogerpon to knock itself, or to be knocked out by poison. before the combination of IV Cudgel and Earth Power can come through. Because the Earth Power is on the because Earth Power is an option for this Regidrago. Even at -4, this Weezing's Focus Sash will leave it at 1 HP from this +1 attack, Fire Terra boosted IV Cudgel. And so if you have to take the combination of those two attacks, despite all odds, this actually might be a 1 game for Mancuso here.
Hornleech as well, to make sure that if there wasn't the Protect, or on this next turn, if you just lock into the same thing, you do get some of that recovery, so it's not going to be an out of a triple Protect to try and just get this KO onto the Ogerpon. So, good to see you there. We'll get to see you there as we get to just run it back yet again. The Ogerpon, too, I like that it is going to need to do a little bit more damage, because you did go ahead and Terastallize before the Weezing hit the field again, so you got that attack boost from that Embody aspect as opposed to afterwards. But Hornleech, not even going for that Protect. Not very effective, just a little bit of damage. But unless it's a critical hit from this Regidrago, I don't think it's going to be doing the much either. And this is going to be knocking it out due to that Life Orb Coil.
Hornleech there, I get the desire to try and, kind of boost your HP a little bit, kind of guard yourself against some of that poison damage coming through. But I feel like that might have been enough damage with IV Cudgel to possibly take the knockout. Yeah, if you were able to get that off here, but Confusion from Strange Steam coming through. So now not only... Oh, I think that actually is exactly enough HP to be knocked out by poison on this turn, too. Was that 22 that it was taking? Oh, man.
Oh, this is going to be close. It's going to be close. So Protect. And if you do not just get KO'd by the poison damage right here, then you still need to go through the Confusion and then hope there's not a double Protect. And we're just going to self-KO. So hit yourself in Confusion. Ogerpon goes down. And the funniest little endgame, Uncle Lou to take the set 2-0.
And it's smart, decision making by Mancuso there, trying to get some of that HP back with Hornleech. Yeah, you almost put yourself in position where you can survive another turn of the Weezing protecting, but I'm wondering if the IV Cudgel there would have been enough. Of course, Hornleech being resisted and IV Cudgel being boosted by the Terastallization meant that difference in damage could have been a knockout there and could have sent us to a game 3, but I imagine it was very, very close, and that's a really tough call to make in that late in a set.
It's a tough one, but already with the little stacked against you, and if you thought maybe it was just all these protects, it is what it is. But congratulations with the Dondozo right on everything to Uncle Lou to be able to take this week.
I beg you to not bring that to any league challenges.
For Jake's sanity.
Please. What fun matches we had here. Three of the best matches we had this week in NPA with 6 really great players that have been succeeding both online and in person in the last few months. So it's a pleasure to get to bring those to y'all.
Yes, it was a lot of fun. We got to wrap things up so I can go and try and find a Dondozo Weezing Koraidon team to go play on ladder, because this looks so fun and so annoying. So it'll be a great time. But thank you all so much for tuning in. Jake for being a wonderful co-caster. We will see you all next week. Later.